So, welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. This is your host, Maureen Spielman, and today I'm sitting down with Susie Pearl. I'm really excited about this conversation. I want to give a shout out thank you to Abigail Zoe Martin because she is the conduit through which I am meeting Susie today. So, I will say welcome to you, Susie. Thank you so much for being here.
It's lovely to be here and share some conversation with you, Maureen. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And I had gone to Abigail and I said, she had said early on, if there's anyone who piques your interest within the guest that she had on Energy Unlimited last summer, let me know. And she had given me your name. And when I just heard the beginning of your story, I was immediately just taken with it, absorbed by it. So we can start wherever you would like today, wherever feels comfortable. But I was really taken with your story of your near death experience and just all the things that have happened in your life since that time.
Mm,
So I'll just invite you to begin wherever feels comfortable for you.
Thank you. Well, have been living on the island of Ibiza, sunny Ibiza in the Mediterranean near Spain. And I found myself a little confused and couldn't remember where I'd parked my car and so on. And there's lots of strange stories that began to pop up. And I was going to meet my neighbor for coffee one morning in a cafe where we always met. And I was about an hour late. And she said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "I couldn't remember the way." And this sparked off in her concern for me. And she is a very forceful Croatian woman. And she said, "I think you need to get checked out medically." I said, "No, no, no, I'm fine. I'm just a little forgetful." And she wouldn't take no for an answer. And she saved my life that day by bundling me into a car, taking me off to a hospital. And when I got there, en route, we went to a bioresonance healer who said, "There's something strange going on with your brain." So then we went to hospital and they did a brain scan. And the brain scan came back and there was a humongous brain tumor. So everyone was very hyper concerned. And the doctor came in really white-faced. And he said to me, "I've got some big news and it's not my job to dress this up. You have a very large tumor and you have probably about 3 weeks to live. The prognosis is not good for this particular condition that you have." So that's a big piece of news to receive for anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For me, I'm a mum. I have had a child who was teenage, still quite young, and I'm a single mum. So I knew that it didn't suit me to go anywhere at that point. So
Wow.
I've been a meditator for many years. And so I did my inside work. I went inside, sat on my bed. I was in hospital. I sat on my bed. And there were nurses in and out doing lots and lots of procedures the whole time. And I sat on my bed and I had this feeling that I was going to die. And it was a very strong feeling. So I went out to the nurses' station and I said, "Hey, look, can you keep an eye on me?" And they said, "Sure, what's up?" And I said, "I'm going to die today." They said, "No, no, no, you're fine. Don't worry, we've got you covered." So I went back to my bed, started to meditate, and then I felt this whoosh, this kind of movement of my spirit inside myself. And I felt it come up and I felt it was leaving my body. And from the crown of my head, it was like I had a suction pad on. And I felt that my spirit was being lifted up. And then the next thing was I was out of my body and I was taking a trip around the universe with nobody. And I was experiencing this in full 3D. It was a bit like watching a movie, flying through the sky effortlessly. And I got shown heaven. And then I heard in my ear very clear messages. And one of the messages was, "You have a choice. You can stay here in this blissful place, or you can return back to your life," which is a familiar thing that happens in near-death experiences. And I said, quick as a flash, "I need to go back. This is not my time. I have things to do back on planet Earth." So as soon as I decided that and set that intention, I was immediately transported, bam, with a white flash of light back into my body. That is extraordinary in itself. The most extraordinary thing at that moment was that when I entered back into my body, the thing that was in my head healed completely, fully and completely. And I had a brain scan the next day, and the doctor came in and said, in 40 years of oncology, I've never seen this, but it's gone and there's no
Incredible.
scarring.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I had a
That's
full healing.
yes, it's absolutely incredible. And does it surprise you looking back that they don't see this more often, or not at all? Because
It's a thing. I mean, I started to tell doctors about it afterwards, said, this thing happened, but they don't have a format or a template or a model of understanding for this. It's a very kind of materialism based scientific aspect to being a doctor and training, and they're not trained to accept this kind of information. So actually the doctor who led my particular case, he never knew that this had happened. It was only afterwards that I began to join the dots on all of these things. And at the time, I was just very happy to hear I hadn't got brain cancer anymore. I didn't really think too much about it. And subsequently, I began researching. I was watching films, reading books, and reading all the data. And I realized that what happened to me as a near-death experience had very familiar features that happen to many people.
Okay.
But I don't think the scientific world, the doctor world, is particularly up to date with this. So it doesn't surprise me that they don't.
Well, I mean, the book that a lot of people might know is the Anita Moorjani's Dying to Be Me. And what I understood from her book when she had her near-death experience, that it was so vivid what she heard when she was, whatever it was, when she had left her body, like you're saying, and had that choice point, that she could hear her, I think her partner, her husband, and the doctors down the hall. And so there were all these hallmarks that were just that weren't explainable. So I'm wondering too, with your experience, it's almost like a data point for people to study around near-death experiences. Like, it becomes very important to share the story, to know that this, I don't know if it's here for people, but you were saying just before we hit record that it absolutely changed the course of your life. And was it how you understood what you were here for?
There's a couple of things. I asked at the time, why am I going through this experience? And I was told very clearly, and as I was going into the scanner, this happened. I had a golden orb come around me, and it was a flock of golden angels who were there. And they were here to answer questions. And I said, why am I going through this? I got a very clear answer. It's because you're a writer, you're a published author, and you have a big platform. We want you to write about this, and there will be a movie as well. And really your job, if you like, is to communicate about this. You're a very rational soul. I've run businesses and I've had a very successful career. I'm credible. So it happened to someone who's credible. So I have indeed just written a book about this because it's fascinating. It's not about the fact that this happened, but it's about what I learned on this journey. That's the interesting thing. What did I find out when I was out of my body and traveling? And when I came back into my body, everything had changed. My model of the world had changed. My reference points had changed. I had no fear of death, nothing to fear. It's beautiful on the other side. And our spirit lives on. It's impossible to die. Our bodies may cease to be, and they may flake out or break or get damaged. Fine. But the spirit is universal. It carries on. And I realized that we are extremely powerful as human beings, way more powerful than we have been led to believe or are taught in schools. And I'd also spent many years beforehand working in the realms of mind technology and understanding hypnosis, altered states of consciousness, and so on, and science behind all of that. And I studied it deeply. But it wasn't until I had this personal experience that I began to realize what was this all really about. So I realize now that we are all one, which is something I'd read about many, many times in many books and didn't understand what it was. Now we understand. We are all part of this collective consciousness. What we do, what we talk about, what we feel, what we think about affects everything. So to think, what can I possibly do to help this world? We do a lot. We do it piece by piece, step by step, individual by individual and collectively, we have this enormous power. And I think one of the reasons is that the world is going so crazy right now is because of news pumping out. There's a collective consciousness of fear and upset and anger and frustration, all of these negative emotions that are floating around, affecting us one by one, but more importantly, affecting the whole consciousness and frequency of the planet. So it's our jobs really to get educated and to find out more about the power of consciousness and the power of how we think. I realized up there, when I say up there, I say up there, I realized that every thought that we have counts.
Wow. Yeah.
Every intention that we set has great power. For example, when I set the intention, I wanted to come back. This happened instantaneously with a white flash. Once I thought myself into, I'm doing this, I'm returning, that happened immediately. So the power of intention is extremely powerful, more powerful than any of us realize.
Okay. Yeah.
So the idea of doing affirmations, thinking good thoughts, praying, visualizing, thinking about what you want to create, all of these techniques that we learn and that have been carried through cultures and generations for eons, that's all meaningful. It all means something and it works.
Yeah.
So I think in this time of shaky change, we need to catch up with what is possible as a human being and to use our consciousness in the most powerful and positive way we can.
I love it all, Susie. I'm thinking about the timing of your podcast too, just the two of us meeting and what you're saying, building on a lot of people who have come before you. But even for myself, for those of us who haven't had the experience that you've had, you're here to share it with us and to be this soul on earth to disseminate or to share these messages. And what I understand too, for many years, I've heard about like our thoughts and the power of intention, but really what I hear you saying is no, like a grounding. This is actually so important for humanity, so important for this place and time we find ourselves now. So you're this ambassador for messages. And
why it's important is we can change the world. We can make things better. And man, we need to do some serious work right now.
Absolutely.
There's serious stuff going on, and we can watch it and switch off the TV or fold up the news, but whatever channels one's getting the news in. And I must admit, I've stopped watching the news because I want to keep my frequency as high as possible so that I can be powerful for good. And I advise people not to do things that bring them down and make them feel terrible. As human beings, we're meant to be here. We're meant to be happy, kind, compassionate, having fun, doing nice things. We're not meant to be in trauma and difficulty and facing this dark side of things. That's not why we're designed. And I get this inspiration when I go walking in nature. I look at plants and I've had the door open today. I can hear the birds singing. This gives me great inspiration. This world was designed magnificently. I mean, look at every flower, every little beetle, every little insect. Just looking at these little things makes us realize that we are in a divine order. This is something that could not be designed by anything other than a great force. So we have to kind of acknowledge that. And I believe that we're all here on a mission, and anyone listening to this will have their interest piqued around what is possible to make change. How can we make our lives better and the lives of everyone else better? And we know the kind of things that work, but for some reason, our culture and our lifestyle and the collective, we're doing a lot of things that are not working for us. For example, eating food that is covered in pesticides. Why would we do that? The pharmaceutical industry is wild. It's wild, encouraging us to take stuff that's manufactured and chemical based in order to overlay, any symptoms and things, all of this sort of thing. If we get back to good food, correct kind of education and awareness around the power of human beings again, and almost take back our power.
I like that.
And reorganize ourselves in society, then we have a better chance of being able to have wonderful lives, which I believe is why we're here.
Absolutely. There's just so much in what you're saying. And I feel like even when we talk about, you're saying about our nourishment and the organic food, clean food, and those also are benefiting us from keeping our vibration higher. Do you look at some of those things as the systems that have been in place that have had the say over, what we're eating or what we're ingesting or whether it's the news or the type of,
Well, it's a very toxic, society's been organized in quite a toxic way. When I was in hospital, the food I was being served up, it was dead, microwaved, processed, nothing fresh, no fresh vegetables, no fresh fruit, fizzy drinks, sugary croissant, sugary cereals with terrible milk, all this sort of thing. That would have made me ill if I wasn't ill already, being in hospital. So I had to have my friends and family bring me in green juice and fresh food and so on, so that I could allow my cells to recover and deal with all the harsh chemicals that were being. And I was under, one of the things I faced when I got cancer was I was told, you need to have 4 rounds of chemo and stem cell transplant, so on and so on. Real hardcore chemicals in my body. I didn't want that, but I did want to get well. But my family was so upset. There was a big meeting called with my family, pleading me to have chemo because they wanted me to survive. And it was a very difficult thing. I was under a lot of pressure from the family to do what the doctors were saying or advising. And I spent many years really following a very untraditional approach, or a new approach, let's say, to how I live my life. I didn't take tablets or so on. I would always find the natural version to heal any problem that I had. And I wasn't keen on taking any kind of medicines, particularly something as strong and toxic as chemo. So I said, no, I'm not taking it. And my family freaked out. My brothers pleaded with me to take it. So in the end, I agreed. So I did, and I just prayed to protect myself from the toxicity of it. And even now, I'm still doing a lot of naturopathic work to clear the impact on my cells. It's not an easy decision, and it wasn't comfortable for the people around me. They wanted me to go the normal route.
Absolutely.
Advised by doctors. So I know a lot of people have this trouble where they get traditional advice and they don't want to follow it. And that was certainly where I was.
Yes, absolutely. I had gone through my own journey with cancer, and I remember getting a second opinion, and I didn't want to hear what the first doctor had told me. And when the second doctor came back and said the same thing, I didn't want to hear it. And I was leaving the office and I said, does anyone ever not follow your recommendation? And I was surprised because she was a woman on the edge of retirement, and she said, all the time. And that surprised me because if I hadn't asked the question, that gave me more autonomy and sovereignty over my own choices.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's
It
a tricky one.
It's very.
People believe that you need that to survive. But anyway, it was, in my opinion, the near-death experience of going up to heaven and coming back into my body. And the fact that my body healed instant, and my body was healed when I came back in.
Wow.
Clearly something very majestic and miracle-like happened that day. And even my family member, one of my family members said, this looks like a miracle. And the doctor actually said when he came back with my results the next time with the scan where the tumor had gone, he said, this looks like a miracle to me, but we're in the business of miracles. And I said, oh, that's interesting, because I am. That is my business.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so now I know that my work is to share what information I got up there. And I got quite a lot. One of the things I saw beyond any reasonable doubt whatsoever is that we are all part of one organism. And I like the hermetic system of looking at the universe where it says, as above, so below, as within, so without. You look at any, like a honeycomb. We have a central cell in the honeycomb where the queen bee sits, and this magnificent connection of other cells that all combine together to make this complete honeycomb. But actually, individually, there's all sorts of cells that make up this complete thing. I saw life in the same way. We are individuals with individual looks and bodies and faces and personalities and life stories, but we are also part of this whole collective structure.
Yeah.
And how we have within the collective structure is phenomenal. And
Beautiful.
this is what is made very clear to me. So it makes it clear why to live your life doing good, being good is so important, because it does impact the whole. And I think now more than ever, we need to focus on kindness, compassion, and being good to each other, so that we can create a better world for everyone.
And I'm thinking too, for the listener, Susie, where do we, you've put out some they seem like simple things, but powerful things, like your thoughts, your intentions, kindness, compassion, to serve humanity. And what are you seeing as things that are happening that are really beneficial to the world right now that we can step into more, or any sort of messages to individual listeners about, is it about bringing more light, or is it just about doing the goodness in our own lives?
Well, I think, we've been through, in our generation, we've been through some interesting times. My mother came from wartime where she had bombs going overhead. They had air raid shelters in the gardens and so on. Their problems were very different to the problems that I've had in my life. The pandemic was clearly something that was a very significant event in my own life and our generation, where things changed. Our life had to change very fast. We had to make ourselves much smaller, occupy a much smaller space, couldn't travel. And within that, a lot of amazing things happened. A lot of people talk about how much they tapped into their creativity, for example. I wrote a book during lockdown and post my illness on creativity, the art of creativity, and why creativity is important for us as human beings to express ourselves. So I think this expression comes out of the difficulties. And I think that's true of many, many things, is that great things come from difficulties. We learn our strengths through going through challenges and difficulties. All the difficult things in my life, I can look at in retrospect and go, that really gave me the muscle I needed. This was what I needed to experience this difficult thing, so that I could come through stronger. When you look at the myths and the storytelling and the hero's journey, it is all nothing. No one learns anything when everything's going great. Everything's fine. You haven't got anything to worry about. You learn nothing. You learn everything when the difficulty hits. You find out who your friends are. You find out what's important. If you run out of money and have money difficulties, you find appreciation and value in what you do have. And you realize, actually, we don't need all this stuff that we've been told we need to be happy. Actually, being happy is not linked to that. It's very much something within. So it's encouraging people to go within and finding their power, their truth from within.
Oh, beautiful. And, I've been thinking a lot, Susie, because I've had this honor of interviewing a lot of different people and all these different perspectives coming through. But it almost feels like the time we're in right now is by universal design. And I guess what I'm kind of picking up on is, even when I have 3 children who are 18 to 23 years old. So this generation they went through the pandemic as young people. They have a world of technology we never had. There's more anxiety, there's more depression. And yet we're at this point in time where there's more conversations around like we're having today. There's spirituality infusing. It feels like I can see with my listenership, it goes pretty young down to 18 years old. So is there a meeting of what's happening in the world, the deep need of the world right now, and what's opening up on this universal plane?
For sure. For sure. This is no coincidence that the world is spinning into, terror, war, difficulty, mental health issues for young people and older people. Whilst we're going through all of this, and the need then to people reaching out to, why am I here? What's my purpose? What is there a God? Is there a bigger force than I? Asking these questions about spirituality in whatever form. It's not religion, not talking about religion. I'm talking about digging deep into who you are as a human being and what does that mean.
Yes.
And for sure, once again, the difficulties, the challenges, and so on, send us to a place where we go into deep learning. And maybe if everyone's life was great and flawless, there wouldn't be the need to look at this area and people wouldn't bother. But it is in our times of greatest troubles that we find ourselves leaning in to find out what can we do to help ourselves. And that seems to be one of the things that is going on right now. Plus, of course, that ideas anywhere in the world can be spun around the world globally in 3 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so one person starts talking about, and I've been talking about manifesting, and that I've been very interested in manifesting all my life and how that works. And I wrote about it about 12 years ago in a book, and it wasn't its time. Whereas now I've just been picked up by Penguin, who are going to republish my book as a new edition, because it's a thing now. People are like, tell me about manifesting. What is that? What does it
Absolutely.
mean? How do I do it?
Yes.
Everyone's into it, and you go on TikTok for 3 seconds and it comes up, or Instagram or whatever. So ideas have their time for sure. And this is the time of an upgrading consciousness, I believe, that we're going through, because we have to. But it still astonishes me the kind of world leaders we're choosing, how people like the world leaders who are getting in on these in the biggest countries in the world are. It's baffling to me that such atrociously unawake people can be running countries and continents in the way that happens. And actually, I do believe that if they did some work or did some plant medicine or whatever, I think all politicians should be required to do this, so they can make decisions based on human goodness and being clear.
So does it seem like there's a lag almost in that more expansive collective consciousness that is still vibrating lower, electing officials who are stuck in an older paradigm? Is there just a lag occurring?
I don't know, because time is an odd thing, isn't it? And one of the things I found when I flew out my body that I'm writing about now is that there is no time up there.
Yeah.
Everything is happening concurrently. We as humans see time as a construct, and we create time as a construct, but it's not a real construct. And if you look at modern day physicists, Brian Cox, people like this, they can show you on a physics level that time doesn't exist. So people often say to me, how long were you up there for? I can't answer that, because time doesn't exist. So as far as lag time and things is concerned, I don't know. I can't really figure that. It doesn't really mean much to me. But I think the experience that we're having as humans on the planet right now is knocking into us an absolute need for a greater understanding of us as a species and the consciousness of the human being and the extraordinary brilliance of our bodies, and how this body we have and we're contained in does all the magnificent things it does every day. I mean, it really is extraordinary. It breathes us, it heals us, it connects us to others, it gives us intuition, gives us a place to have thoughts and feelings, and extraordinary how that all works. And I think that part of our generation, if you will, or our point in history right now in the space-time collective, there are much bigger questions coming up. And at one time, the kind of talk about spirituality and consciousness would have been relegated to woo-woo and way out there, very small band, whereas now it's mainstream and it's coming up as very prevalent and omnipotent in our world, thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
because we are spiritual beings. And when we start living life like we are a spiritual being and having consciousness and conscience around that, then we begin to make much better decisions. And also, when bad things happen to us, to be able to say, what is this here to teach me? What muscle have I got to improve? This is clearly a lesson for me.
Yeah.
The same, I hear people say to me, and I'm a coach as well, I hear people come up saying, time after time, this happens. I meet the wrong person, or I have this experience, it keeps happening. Yeah, because that's something that you need to pay attention to. And so we're looking at problems in different ways. Now we're looking at them at how does it affect us in terms of our belief systems and our programming. I very much see life that we're a bundle of, as like a supercomputer with a load of programs, belief systems. Some of our programs don't work very well or outdated. One of the things, when I went out, my body came back, I came back with a different operating software.
Amazing.
And I needed to make a great deal of changes. I needed to integrate back into life, and I needed to make new decisions about who my friends were, who I'd hang out with, what I would do for a living. All of these things had to change because I changed so dramatically in that moment.
It's such a beautiful story. I'm hearing a lot too, Susie, of just right now, all these things are here, and it's our personal responsibility to go within and look. And I just think it's the body and our intelligence, where for a lot of people now, it's younger, but even when we get to midlife, we feel it inside when things are out of alignment. There's a calling from within, calling for us to open up to new messages and new ideas and new ways of thinking. We know it in our body, yet sometimes we quiet it just for what reason, I'm not sure. I guess to stay comfortable sometimes.
Well, conditioning as well. It's very rare. The kids certainly don't grow up in schools where they go, listen to your intuition. What's your intuition say about it? There's not a conversation that people have, so that they should be having. So our society doesn't lend itself to conditioning of these things, and hopefully we want to move to that. I see educational models are changing. I mean, where I live in Ibiza, we're very much on the leading edge of, there's a lot of healers, there's a lot of new ways for education, there's a lot of plant ceremonies happening here, gatherings, meditations, sound healings, using sound to heal, all of these leading edge technologies. And I see it as very normal, but of course it's because I live where I live. For many people, this is something that feels very edgy and not quite right.
I feel like if they measure the vibration of the island, it would be quite high.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I have to just thank you for this beginning conversation, Susie, of what you learned during your experience and how you're bringing it forth in the world, because these messages have the ability to be so exponential. And even the reverberation and the energy in your vibration today is just, I'm excited about it to bring it forward through Mystical Sisterhood. And so it sounds like we have a book to look forward to, a rewriting, or the Penguin taking your manifesting book. Or what other ways are you bringing your messages out into the world these days?
Well, I mean, I'm just writing this new book, 3 weeks, and that's going to be made into a film as well, which is exciting, Hollywood movie. But and my books that I've written already, there's a lot of my things in there. But my new book, 3 weeks, will have a lot of the story of what I went through on my travels, and more importantly, the things I learned when I died and came back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing. Is there anything
That's
else you want
really
to
nice.
add?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marie. Well, just so people can follow me on Instagram, I'm Susie Pearl X.
Okay.
And maybe you could put this in the show notes, and then also on my Insta and other social channels. Just have a look at my website. It's all on there.
Sure. Okay. And is it Susie Pearl is your website?
.com.
Okay. .com. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks to your listeners for tuning in. It's really nice.
Yeah, no, they're going to be really excited about this. Thank you, the listener, for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you. Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit maureenspielman.com or mysticalsisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.